Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks, as always, for tuning in, guys. Joining us this week is unbeaten super lightweight contender Brandun Lee. Also, the one and only Joe Goossen will stop by as well. Mike and I will take a look at Saturday's PBC on Showtime headliner featuring Sebastian Fundora and Ryan Mendoza. Plus, we're going to take a look back at the Benavidez versus Plant pay-per-view card on toe-to-toe. But first, last Saturday, former two-time heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua returned to the ring to mixed reviews as he won a 12-round unanimous decision over Jermaine. Franklin, Mike, what did you think of the fight?
Well, the thing that stands out is I expected more from Joshua. He controlled the fight, which I think was a mismatch, by design, if you will. Joshua's people just wanted him to get back into the win column, I think. I expected him to pick up the pace in the second half of the fight and stop Franklin. I think most people did. Instead, he held Franklin more than he punched him, down the stretch, which tells me that he still hasn't gotten over the knockout loss to Andy Ruiz Jr. in 2019. It was a clear victory for Joshua, but he certainly didn't make a strong statement in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Franklin was game. This is a man who arguably, beat Dillian Whyte, and I thought he gave Joshua a good test, and Joshua showed he was a level above. Did Joshua show any improvement to you?
I don't know. I don't think so. He's always been a good boxer, as he showed in the rematch with Ruiz and the second fight with Alexander Usyk. He almost won that second fight with Usyk, or certainly made it really competitive. On Saturday, I thought he looked pretty good in the first half of the fight. He was jabbing, landing some of his right hands, and he looked more confident in the middle rounds, which led me to think, okay, we might see something dramatic here. And then we just didn't. He just kind of like cruised the rest of the fight, and when it was over, I was just like, eh.
Yeah, I thought I saw some technical improvement. The jab was a lot more effective. He really went to the body while the left hook downstairs, and his stamina seemed to bit better too, but
that's true.
Where I didn't see change was in the mental. He still seems to be a bit tentative and wary, and I think in heavyweight boxing that can cost you. Where do you rank Joshua among today's heavyweights?
Yeah, I think you still probably have to put him at number 4. Certainly no higher than that, behind Tyson Fury, Usyk, and Deontay Wilder, in my opinion. I think guys like Joe Joyce and Frank Sanchez, maybe Jared Anderson, might turn out to be better than Joshua, but they still need to demonstrate that. They haven't shown that in the ring yet. I think he loses to all 3 of the guys that I mentioned initially: Fury, Usyk, and Wilder. Although, again, the second fight with Usyk was close. Who knows what might happen in a third fight, but I don't see him beating Fury, and I don't see him beating Wilder. So I think he's number 4 now, but let's see what happens going forward.
Yeah, and he's had 2 cracks at Usyk and couldn't do it. And I think, Fury and Wilder are just bad style matchups for him. I would say number 4, number 5 as well. Got him sort of on par with Joe Joyce. Who would you like to see him fight next, though?
If you're asking me as a fan, I'd like to see him fight Fury or Wilder because I think it'd be fun to watch those fights. Yeah. And obviously those would be lucrative fights for everybody involved. But I don't think he's going to jump right into that kind of fight, though, at least not in his next fight. Eddie Hearn, his promoters, mentioned Dillian Whyte, cue the groaning sound.
Yeah, it's just terrible.
Or I'm just tired of White keeps popping up to be an opponent for anybody and everybody. I don't get it. And then Otto Wallin, who that's an okay matchup. It's potential. Anyway, those 2 guys are potential opponents. I think that makes sense given Joshua's so performance against Franklin. Then if he improves under Derek James, he could shoot for a big fight after that. They both seem to say, well, James seemed to say after the fight that, that was just the first step. Franklin fight was just the first step, that the longer they work together, the better, Josh was going to be. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I definitely do not want to see a Dillian Whyte. We just saw Anthony Joshua win 12 rounds to nothing against a guy who went life and death with Dillian White. And we've seen Joshua stop Dillian White years ago. It just makes, I don't know what
White's popular there.
Yeah, with Dillian White. I really
he's popular
don't
over
understand
there.
it. I guess that's the only reason. But like you, I like the Otto Wallin fight. I think that's a good, tough, stern test for Joshua, and hopefully we see it next. And with that, let's move on to the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday, Premier Boxing Champions returns with unbeaten 154-pound sensation Sebastian Fundora, the towering Inferno, taking on the dangerous Brian Mendoza for Fundora's interim WBC Super Welterweight title. The action on Showtime begins at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we, of course, begin here with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Sebastian Fundora is 20-0-1 with 13 knockouts. Brian Mendoza 21-2 with 15. Obviously, Fundora's, well, not necessarily, but Fundora's 5-0 in his last 5 with 3 knockouts. Mendoza 3-2 with 2 knockouts. Last fight for Fundora, Carlos Ocampa. Fundora won unanimous decision this past October. Mendoza is coming off his big win over Jason Rosario. He stopped the former unified champ in 5 rounds last November. Fundora's 62% knockout rate. Mendoza 65. Fundora's fought 109 rounds. Mendoza 82. Fundora's 25. Mendoza 29. Fundora turned pro 2016. Mendoza 2014. Fundora's a southpaw. Mendoza fights from an orthodox stance, and this is where it gets fun. Fundora's 6'5.5", 6'6", depending on who you ask. Mendoza's 5'10", and this is just crazy. Fundora's got an 80-inch reach. According to BoxRec, Mendoza's got a 70-inch reach, so that's a major difference. Fundora fights out of Coachella, California, which is in the Southern California desert, and Mendoza is from Albuquerque.
Where do you rank Sebastian Fundora at 154 pounds, and why?
I think you have to rank him just below undisputed champion Jermell Charlo, with guys like Tim Tszyu, actually maybe just Tim Tszyu. Fundora had a breakthrough victory last year over Erickson Lubin, who I was really high on at the time. That lifted him to another level in my eyes and in the eyes of a lot of people. And then he showed against Carlos Ocampo in October that he could win in more than one way. He boxing more than he normally does in that fight, but still won, a wide decision. I don't know whether he beats Charlo or Tszyu, but he's right there with those guys.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else you can place higher than him. What about Mendoza, though? I feel like the focus has been on Fundora leading up to this fight. Is Mendoza being overlooked?
Probably to some extent. I was a little surprised, actually, when I saw the odds, which are heavily in Fundora's favor. I mean, I would make him the favorite, but he's a big favorite in this fight. I had a chance to talk to Mendoza. He seems to be in a really good frame of mind. Really like the guy. That's sort of like, in my mind, I thought, this guy's demeanor makes me think he's got a better chance than some people might think. I like his story. He lost 2 out of 3 fights between 2019 and 2021 and was pretty much written off. Then after he beat a journeyman, he gets a call to fight, former unified champ Jason Rosario on short notice, and he knocks the guy out. That showed me that he's a guy who believes in himself and perseveres, which are necessary qualities to be an elite fighter. So I think Mendoza's got a lot going for him.
Yeah, sure. It looks like he's peaking at the right time heading into this fight. What are the keys to victory for Fundora?
I guess I always say the same thing, but I would use his height and that massive reach advantage, at least early in the fight. Mendoza is going to try to work his way inside and break Fundora down like everybody tries. Fundora has to make that as difficult as possible. If I were him, I would jab, throw some power shots, even move a little bit to keep Mendoza away, and then gradually stand your ground more and more as the fight goes on, pick up your pace, and then start breaking Mendoza down. Bottom line, don't rush anything, and I don't think he will. I think he'll take his time early in the fight and just gradually, get nastier and nastier.
What about Mendoza? What are his keys to victory?
Mendoza's a bit of a body snatcher. He likes to go to the body. I think that could be his ticket to victory. Just pound the body relentlessly, which could be the way to slow down, that 6'6" runaway train, if you will. He'll also have to be patient, I'm guessing. I think Fundora is going to do what I suggested. box early in the fight. Mendoza can't get frustrated. He can't get wild or anything like that. I think just take his time, work his way inside, pound that body. And if he could do that successfully enough and often enough, I think Fundora might have problems.
Yeah, he's going to have to fight the perfect fight, it seems like. But it also seems like he's in the right frame of mind to do so. What is at stake for each fighter?
Well, as I've said, when you're a top contender like Fundora, every fight's a big fight. If he wins, he remains on track to get his first title shot sometime real soon. If he loses, that opportunity's out the window for the time being. That's why these guys have to stay motivated. They have to stay focused all the time. A slip up can spoil all your plans. And Mendoza, this is similar to the Rosario fight, an opportunity, a big opportunity to demonstrate that he's an elite guy, a guy who deserves a title shot in his own right. He probably has less to lose because he's not on the cusp of a title fight, but this is a big, big opportunity for him. This kind of opportunity that might not come along again.
Yeah, I agree with you. And who are you picking?
Well, as I suggested, I give Mendoza a better shot than the odds makers do because I believe he's a good boxer. He punches hard, and he's a mentally tough guy. That said, I think the fight's going to go as I suggested earlier. I think Fundora is going to land more and more shots as the fight progresses and either win a wide decision or score a late knockout.
Yeah, I went back and forth with this a lot. I truly believe that Mendoza has a good shot at pulling off the upset, but in the end, I couldn't pull the trigger. I like Fundora by close decision and what I expect to be a war. He should be the busier fighter, and I think if he can deal with Mendoza's explosiveness, he will outwork him over 12 rounds. Now, in the co-feature of that bout, undefeated 140-pound contender Brandun Lee takes on the toughest test of his career as he faces Pedro Campa. And speaking of Brandun Lee, he joins us now.
So I've been following your career, one of the most exciting young fighters, I think, in the world. I keep thinking, man, I really want to see what Brandun can do at the next level, taking that next step. Have you been anxious to do that too?
Of course, after my last fight, I stated that I'm done fighting these opponents, and I want someone who really gives me a challenge.
I ask a lot of fighters this, but how difficult is it to play the step-by-step waiting game? Or do you tell yourself, I'm only 23, there's no rush?
Oh, there's no rush. There's definitely no rush. And, like I told someone earlier before, how they say that you only have one life? Well, you only have one boxing career. So it's important for me to take each step very cautiously.
Yeah, I really like what I see, but I also keep telling myself, you're only 23 years old, so you're young. Do you feel like things will be accelerated now that you're with PBC?
I think so. But at the same time, I feel like they understand that I'm yet only 23 years old. So we have a great relationship with him, and we have a great relationship with Showtime. And, I'm just extremely grateful for the opportunity.
I saw you were ranked by the WBC. What does that mean to you? Is that a step? Important step?
It's definitely a step, for sure. But, of course, I want to remain there. So I have to continue to work hard and eventually hit a top 10.
So you're undefeated. So obviously you've been doing the right thing fight after fight after fight. But would you say that you're still developing?
I would say that my body's developing. My man strength is still developing. Maybe even my maturity in the boxing ring is still developing.
What about technique-wise?
For sure, technique. We're always developing the technique. You can never stop learning in boxing.
I guess you could maybe a good way to ask this is, what percentage do you think you are, like, in terms of where you are compared to your ultimate peak? Like, are you 80% there, 90% there in terms of your ability?
Yeah. Shit. That's tough. I feel like I have yet to have an opponent to really bring out my full ability. So it's still pending.
Okay, that's legit. You mentioned that your body's developing. You're still getting your man strength. Does that mean that we could see you in the next weight class and maybe the one after that?
54 is very unlikely, but possibly 47 after I win a world title at 140.
Okay.
I'm not really a fan of fighters, fighting, not accomplishing, and then moving up. I'm not really a fan of that.
So when you say you're getting your man straight, you can stay at the same weight and still get stronger.
Correct. Okay. Hopefully.
Well, I think you can. Yeah.
I just need, I feel like a lot of these guys, I mean, look at Bernard Hopkins, a lot of these guys, they say, oh, I can't make weight, but they're, 20 plus years old. It's not like they grew.
So what are you doing these days in camp? I mean, you have this power that's just like a natural gift that not too many guys have on the level that you have it. Are you trying not to rely too much on your power? Is that the kind of thing you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. Not every punch can be a knockout punch. It's like a video game. Harder you throw, crazier moves you throw, more faster you're gonna get tired. So, yeah, definitely.
So you don't go in there necessarily thinking, I'm just going to knock this guy's head off.
No, not at all. Especially with my last 3 fights or whatever. I already went the distance, so I have no problem going the distance again.
Great.
When knockout comes, knockout comes.
Good. I think I read that you said Campa is your toughest opponent today. Is that so? And if so, what makes him that, do you think?
Just his resume. He has knockout power. He fought Teofimo Lopez, and I think he's a very strong, rugged Mexican veteran fighter.
So do I. It's kind of cool that he just fought Lopez. I mean, does that kind of like a gauge of where you are compared to the top guys?
No, I don't think so. Styles makes fights. Teofimo is he's a different type of fighter than I am, I would say. Different style.
So if things go well I'm just trying to get what might come next, the next step. So if things go well against Campa, where do you think you're going to be, either generally or specifically?
Like I said before, and I'll say it again, I want those top 15 guys. I want those top 10 guys. And, like I'm 23 years old, or I'm going to be 24 years old next month. So at the same time, we have to cautiously, pick our opponents, the top 15, top 10. And then when time is right, go for a world title or mandatory or eliminator, whatever.
So it sounds like you feel like in terms of your ability, you feel like if you're not there this second, that you're right there on the cusp.
Absolutely.
I mean, if they throw you into a title fight tomorrow, do you think that you could handle it?
Absolutely.
Okay. But you just don't want to jump the gun, it sounds like.
Yeah. That's the main thing. I mean, they bleed red too, so.
Very good. I'm conservative when it comes to this stuff. I say don't. It's better to just wait one fight than try to win a title one fight too soon. That's when disaster happens. Well, how close do you think you are to a title fight realistically?
Realistically, probably let me see. I would like to go for 25 years old.
Okay. So we're talking in the next year and a half, something like that.
About that, yep.
So maybe
December of next year.
So we're talking maybe 4 fights, something like that.
Correct.
How exciting is that prospect?
It's extremely exciting because, from fighting in little high school gyms to, fighting in arenas. Now this is my first co-main. And eventually, I'd love to be main event, and eventually fight at the Staples Center as a main event. So it's extremely exciting to watch the progression.
So am I, which is what makes you so intriguing. So finally, and I'll let you go, to summarize what we talked about earlier. So do you feel like you're on the right track? Is this how you imagine things going?
Absolutely. Besides back in August when I had that hiccup, and then the fight in January was a little sparring session. And then I feel like with this fight, we're right back on track, and we're following the schedule properly.
You when you mentioned the hiccup, you're talking about a tough fight?
Touching the canvas.
Oh, touching the canvas.
Yeah.
You know what? That's not important at all. Go back and look at Felix Trinidad. He used to go down in every fight. And he's in the Hall of Fame. It's what you do after you go down. That's what counts, right? I mean, tell me.
That's true. 100%. That's true.
Yeah. Okay. And you learn from it. All right, man. Listen, thanks so much. Best of luck in this fight and going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, all the best. Take care.
Gervonta Tank Davis. King Ryan Garcia.
The power of Davis. The flash, the hand speed.
Two undefeated stars. Two journeys. One mega fight to make history.
It's over! That crowd had me put it on my head. It doesn't get any better than this.
Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia. Saturday, April 22nd. Live on pay-per-view.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. We didn't get a chance to last week, so this week we're taking a look back at the Benavidez versus Plant pay-per-view, starting with the main event. David Benavidez retaining his interim WBC 168-pound world title with an impressive unanimous decision win over Caleb Plant. Mike, let's start with Benavidez. What were your thoughts on his performance?
I think it was arguably his best performance given the opponent. Plant was a difficult, opponent early in the fight, as I expected, as I said on the podcast. He did a good job of sticking and moving and just being elusive early on. Benavidez never panicked, though. He stayed on course, stalking, closing the distance. And by the middle of the fight, he started landing hard shot after hard shot and wore Plant down. Again, this is kind of what I thought was going to happen. He didn't get the knockout, because of Plant's, elusiveness early in the fight, and Plant did a lot of holding, later in the fight. But that didn't matter much to me. Benavidez chased down and beat up an elite opponent to win a wide, clear decision. I thought he was terrific.
Yeah, he was. He truly was. I thought he fought a very, very patient, smart, intelligent fight. What about Plant? This was a great fight, particularly those first 6-7 rounds. What could he have done differently?
I'm just being honest when I say nothing. I think he had the right game plan. Again, stick, move, stay out of trouble. That's just really hard to do against a guy like Benavidez. It's just a heat-seeking missile. You can't. Well, nobody's been able to stop him so far. He just keeps coming and coming. It's just so hard to stop that. What else could he do? He could have engaged Benavidez more than he did, but I think we know what would have happened had he done that. Plant gave a credible performance. He's just not as good as Benavidez is.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought the same thing. I was like, maybe he could have stood and traded more, gone to the body more. I don't think there's much he could have done. There's no shame in his performance. He put up a valiant effort. He just came up short against a man that's perhaps arguably, the best in the division. Did your opinion of Benavidez change based on this fight?
Not really. I had a really high opinion of him going into the fight. That was arguably his most important victory, though. Another step in establishing himself as a genuine pound-for-pound guy. He's already on my list, but when I say genuine pound-for-pound guy, I'm talking like top 5 at some point. So in that sense, yes, I have more respect for Benavidez than I ever did before the fight, but he just basically confirmed what I had thought before.
Yeah, I think so. I was very, very impressed. I know a lot of people, of course, are comparing his performance to Plant's performance against Canelo Alvarez. Alvarez scoring an 11th round stoppage. I really didn't see much of a difference. The fight could have been stopped in the 11th round. I think both of those were great fights. And I think Benavidez comes out of this match a better fighter. He gained valuable experience in there against an elite opponent, and also the experience of being in his first big pay-per-view promotion. So I do think he'll be a better fighter for it. What should be next for Caleb Plant?
Well, Plant has fought in succession Canelo, Alvarez, Anthony Durrell, and now Benavidez. And knowing him, he'll probably want to face another big-name guy in his next fight. He and Andrade would be a better matchup for him than his last fight. It would be boxer versus boxer. That'd be a really interesting matchup. Charlo might be good. If Jamal Charlo wants to move up in weight, that might be a good fight for him. A smaller guy coming up to meet him, or maybe he takes a step back, in his next fight. Maybe he fights a lower rank contender just to get back in the win column, to catch his breath, that kind of thing. I certainly don't think he's going away, though. I still think he's a really good fighter. Benavidez just wasn't the guy for him right now, but I think he's going to be back.
Yes, he's still a top 168-pounder, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him win a world title at some point. How about Benavidez? What should be next for him?
Okay, so I'm among the legions of fans when I say I'd like to see him, fight Canelo Alvarez next. That'd be just a tremendous matchup. I think it's one of the best possible. As a fan, I think it's one of the best possible matchups in the sport. I don't think that's in Canelo's plan right now, though. He has John Ryder next, and then he evidently wants Dimitri Bivol again. That means Benavidez probably couldn't get him until the following May, if he gets him at all. Who knows how these things play out. I'm just sort of projecting. So maybe, again, Charlo, I know that Benavidez has mentioned he'd like to fight Jamal Charlo if Charlo wants to move up to 168. Again, Demetrius Andrade is another guy. Maybe David Morrell is the fight if Morrell beats Sena Becco, which isn't that's not a given either. But if he wins that fight, yeah, maybe Morrell's a guy. Morrell definitely wants the fight. He said it over and over again. Listen, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Canelo realizes that Benavidez is a better fight for him than a rematch with Bivol. Or maybe Benavidez fights Bivol. He said he'd move up to 175 if he doesn't get fights he wants at 68. So, You know what? Benavidez has options. The best one just happens to be Canelo Alvarez. So fingers crossed that happens at some point.
Yeah, I agree with you. And hopefully Canelo sees what every other person, it seems like, sees in terms of the fight fans. Now, let's move on to the co-feature where we witnessed a battle of rising, unbeaten 154-pounders. Jesus Ramos delivered a statement performance, stopping Joey Spencer in 7 rounds. Mike, assess where Ramos is at right now.
Well, first, I want to publicly acknowledge that I picked Spencer to win that fight. That was no disrespect to anybody involved, but that's one of my worst picks ever. Ramos just looked like an absolute freaking beast in that fight. He boxed well. He was in complete control from beginning to end. He looked super confident. He physically, he looked like he was, Spencer, I think one of the things Spencer said going into that fight was that he was the bigger guy. Ramos, to me, looked like he was like 2 divisions bigger than Spencer. He looked like an absolute monster in there. So that was a beastly performance by Ramos. I've never seen him look that good. Spencer is, still a developing guy. I still believe in him, by the way. I still think he's a talented guy. So we can't judge Ramos too much on that performance. But man, oh man, did he look good in that fight.
Yeah, and I think Spencer showed some moxie in that fight, and hopefully we see him come back. But someone told me that Ramos weighed 171 on fight night, and I believe it. I mean, he certainly looked huge. He looked like a very, very big super welterweight. What should be his next step?
Well, again, you know me, the conservative guy when it comes to this stuff, so I wouldn't rush. But he, to me, looked like a guy who could hang with anybody. So. I think he probably needs to fight a top 5, 6, 7 guy in his next fight. I hadn't thought about anybody specifically, but I think he needs that. And then I think after that he could be in position for a title fight. I think he's there. I really do, based on what I saw in that fight.
Yeah, I say just continue moving him as he's being moved and continue up the ranks. Sky's the limit for Jesus Ramos. Now, also on this card, Chris Colbert and Jose Valenzuela were both looking to bounce back from upset defeats. This was lightweight action, and Colbert, despite being dropped in the first, came back to win a close and controversial 10-round unanimous decision. What were your thoughts on those scorecards?
So first, I want to publicly acknowledge, no, it's actually kind of the same thing. I want to publicly acknowledge that I picked Colbert to win that fight, but I almost feel bad that I did because I don't think he deserved the decision. I don't know. I don't know what the judges were looking at. I do think it was competitive, and I do think that Colbert had his moments. I love the fact that Colbert bounced back from the early adversity. I didn't know if he was going to make it out of the early part of the fight. So I love the fact that he bounced. It really showed me something. That he came back from that and he made the fight competitive. I just didn't agree with the decision. I don't think it was like a horrible decision. I just didn't agree with it.
Yeah, I don't think it was a robbery. I didn't score the fight. I just watched it. I did think that Valenzuela edged it. However, I was, as the rounds progressed, I thought to myself, man, he's allowing Colbert to walk him down and get off combinations, and he wasn't necessarily landing as much as he was early on, but he still had moments later on. How did Valenzuela look to you?
Well, I thought he won. I thought he looked good. I thought he took the fight to Colbert. I thought he landed the cleaner, heavier shots. I don't think he dominated every moment of the fight, but I thought it was a really strong performance. And I think it's really sad for him that he's saddled with back-to-back losses. The second one that, in my opinion, he probably didn't deserve. But, on the positive side, I think people saw what they saw. They saw a good performance against an elite opponent. So I don't think he takes too much of a hit in that fight. I think he comes back and I think he does good things. I think he's a good fighter.
Yeah, I agree with you. What about Colbert? What do you think of his performance?
I don't know. I certainly don't think it was necessarily a step backward. I'm not sure how much of a step forward it was in spite of the victory, though. I think it's always important. It's always good to get a win under your belt. Okay, so now he's coming off a win. That's a positive thing. That should lead to better things. But I think he's going to probably have to work a little bit harder, maybe stand his ground a little bit more than he does. I don't know how that's going to work out for him, but maybe he needs to do that. You just can't get outworked in fights. And I watched so many fights where after the fight's over, I know that the loser's sort of kicking himself going, damn, I wish I would have thrown more punches. I wish I would have worked a little harder. I think he did work hard. Again, bouncing back from the early adversity. But once again, last time I just thought he got outworked by the other guy. And I thought he took the harder shots.
Yeah, I think the big thing that stood out to me is he's a terrific offensive fighter when he lets his hands go, even though he's not necessarily a one-punch guy, but his defense certainly needs work. Even that first round knockdown was telling. So I think that's something that hopefully he recognizes. What should be next for both of these guys?
Well, Colbert's going to want to get a big fight. I guess I can see that. I still think has a ton of talent. I wasn't crazy about the performance, but again, he won. I don't know. I wouldn't go crazy with Colbert now. I still think still think he needs to evolve. So maybe like a fringe contender for Colbert. I think if they put him in against somebody that's too good at this point, it could backfire based on what I've seen. So yeah. I would tread a little bit softly with him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen both of them in the past few days call for a rematch. Ryo's obviously been calling from it since the fight ended. Colbert initially said no rematch. He's a sore loser, but lately he's taken IG and said let's do it again. And I think that is a good idea. I mean, I wouldn't mind them running it back at all. It was that close. A lot of controversy. Let's see them do it again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I missed that, actually. I wish I'd seen that because that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Controversial decision. Valenzuela probably deserved it. So give him a chance to get it right. Give Colbert a chance to show that he is the better guy. So yeah, I think that's the perfect fight.
Yeah, makes sense. Now the televised opener featured two 147-pound contenders vying for the WBC #1 slot. Cody Crowley against veteran Abel Ramos, and Crowley remained unbeaten, winning a decisive unanimous decision over Ramos. Assess Crowley's performance for us.
Crowley's like one of the more predictable guys in the sport. He just comes and he's a tough, durable, fit guy who just outworks you. And that's what he did with Ramos. There were some pretty hairy moments for Crowley, though, I have to say. It wasn't, I guess he won a clear decision, I guess, but that wasn't an easy fight. He took some big shots in that fight. So he showed me that he's got a real good chin, showed me how fit he was. But he does what he does, just keeps coming. And when you're that good, you're that fit, you're that determined, you're that tough, and you just apply relentless pressure, good things are going to happen. That's Cody Crowley.
Yeah, I thought Cody Crowley looked like Cody Crowley. Where do you rank him among 147-pounders today?
I think you probably put him in like the second tier, below the top guy, below guys like Spence and Crawford. There's a big gaggle of 147-pounders who probably deserve, or at least are in position to get a title shot. He's one of those guys. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how he does against the Spences and the Crawfords. I don't know how that style would work against guys like that. But I think he's earned a shot at a big fight. Yeah. Exactly.
I agree with you. And who would you like to see him face next?
This is just sort of stream of consciousness, but Thurman, I could see that, depending how things play out for Thurman against other people he's been negotiating with. Ugas would be a good fight for Crawley. Mario Barrios would be a good fight for Crawley. Across the street, guy like Virgil Ortiz, maybe that probably wouldn't happen. Although I think Crawley be a good opponent for a guy like Virgil Ortiz. So it's these are the kind of guys I was talking about. Rashidi Ellis, somebody like that. These are the guys I'm talking about, like the next level guys who are sort of hoping to get their shot at the top guys. And I think Crawley is competitive with all the guys I mentioned.
Yeah, and I love that Keith Thurman fight. I think that's a great matchup of styles, the way he's, Crowley's sort of nonstop. Keith's a great counterpuncher and mover. I think it'd be very, very intriguing to see who would be able to last as the fight progressed. Now, it's time to bring in our next guest. He is one of the most respected voices in boxing and also one of the game's finest trainers, an all-around good guy who will be in the corner of Ryan Garcia when Garcia takes on Gervonta Tank Davis Saturday, April 22nd on SHOWTIME Pay-Per-View, Joe Goossen. Joe, how has camp been with Ryan Garcia for this upcoming fight?
It's been one of the best camps ever. Ryan is very self-motivated, which is always, a trainer's, dream to have a fighter that's very motivated, self-motivated, where you don't, have to badger him to work. He's running like nobody I've ever seen. He's a great runner. I will tell you that, which is a key to boxing. You got to run. You got to have the legs to sustain you. He is very intense. I always say about Ryan, don't let that look and that demeanor fool you. Deep inside him, he's a vicious competitor. He really is. So, Ryan is, he's really a pleasure to train. He's always on time. He's very smart though too. He's got a coach's mind, which is why I appreciate him so much. He's very different. He's special. He really is. He's a very different cat. He's analytical. He's a deep thinker. He's technically brilliant when it comes to imagining things and then executing things. I can't say enough about him. He's one of the great talents I've ever worked with over a half a century, basically.
So many people are excited for this fight, but this isn't your first rodeo. In terms of pre-fight excitement and overall importance, where does this fight rank to you?
Well, I'm not the excitable type. And I never really have been, because, when you get excited, you lose your train of thought. To me, I don't, and I've said this, I even said it to Ryan. I said, I don't like to do a lot of deep thinking off hours, because, that can, cause anxiety, if you're dwelling on stuff, and, so I like to just keep a clear mind, and I don't get caught up in any of the quote unquote excitement, because what's exciting to me is a fight, period. Now, this is on a huge scale. And yeah, I understand that. And I'm certainly not ignoring it at all. I understand what's at stake here. And I understand how exciting this is to a lot of fans and boxing people. And well, it should be, because it's two of the top guys in the business right now, going at each other. And that's why it was sold out in just hours. And, I know ringside seats for people who are holding tickets to get rid of them are going for a lot of money, But, like I tell Ryan, I like to turn the switch on when I get to the locker room. Where we do our work on a daily basis. We're not talking about excitement. We're not thinking about crowds. We're thinking about game plans. We're thinking about execution. We're thinking about what will work and what won't work. So we're very much into the the nuts and bolts of this fight more so than any of the surrounding excitement to it.
It's coming up fast. So obviously Ryan faces a serious challenge. Give us your take on what's made Tank Davis successful.
Fighters spend the ones that usually make it to the top. A lot of people aren't really aware of the amount of years they've put into it. So to be brief about it, Tank's been doing this since he's been like 8 years old, so over 20 years, basically. He's been through, probably a couple hundred amateur fights, if not more, but at least a couple hundred, I'd imagine, just like Ryan, at all levels of the amateur game. They both excelled in that regard, and then on to the pros. He got a great coach forever and ever in Calvin. They've been together for a long time. There's a camaraderie and a bond there, and obviously he's been taught really good skills. He's a very patient fighter. He's a very accurate puncher. He's a very determined guy. He's very strong. He's ring savvy, and that is what makes him great. Again, there's a certain amount of boxes that you check for what it takes to be a champion, and he's pretty much got them all checked, just like Ryan. They check the boxes: speed, smarts, determination, punching power, defensive skills. They're both at a level that you could only dream of getting all of your fighters at. But as we know, in almost any endeavor in life, like the old saying goes, many are called, few are chosen. And these guys were chosen to be where they're at right now through their hard work and determination.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, so the odds makers have made Davis the favorite, but I'm guessing you like Ryan's chances. We could talk about this for an hour, but tell us why you think Ryan's going to have his hand raised at the end of this fight.
Well, I think if you just look back at what I just said about both guys, I think I have the better racehorse right now. I think I've got a guy that is bigger. Ryan is really like I used to say about De La Hoya, he's a lightweight in a welterweight's body. And I say the same thing about Ryan. He's a lightweight in this fight, but he's got a welterweight body, and he's slowly growing into that. But he's at the point to where, the next year or two, he's going to be fighting at a different weight, no doubt. I think he's got the reach. I think he's got the height, but more importantly, and the speed, but more importantly, he's got power like nobody I've ever seen. And I can tell you, I've trained a lot of great punchers. He is incredible. He's so heavy-handed, and it comes so fast that look, nobody wants to get hit with anybody's best punch, especially if they're knockout punchers. But I'm going to tell you, I like the physical advantage of the height and reach we've got. Okay? And Ryan's speed is, you got to slow the film down when you want to see some of his short left hooks. They just almost imperceptible to the naked eye unless you slow it down. But Ryan has the height, reach. I think he's the bigger man, which is important. And I think he's got unbelievable speed. As quick as Tank is, and he's quick and accurate, I just think we got the edge on the quick twitch muscle there. I think that is Ryan's got a little edge there, but again, power like I've never. What he does to sparring partners is just something I've never seen really. I've had some great fighters. I mean, I've had sparring partners that dominate sparring sessions round after round. But Ryan doesn't only dominate, he punishes, really good fighters. And they come out of the ring going, man, I never knew that you hit this hard.
Davis keeps saying that Ryan is a one-trick pony, that all he has is a left hook. What's your response to that?
Well, okay, has he never been hit with a left hook before? Of course he has. Then you get hit with Ryan's left hook. You can think he's a one-trick pony. I really don't agree with that, but I'm not going to say anything further on that because, what I know to be true is something that will manifest itself in the fight, and we'll see about all that.
Interesting. So another thing is interesting part of this is the weight, 136-pound catch weight. Ryan hasn't weighed that low since early in 2021. And then there's the rehydration clause. Is there any concern about weight? Are you comfortable in terms of both aspects?
Let me just tell you something. Ryan Garcia is, again, he's very smart. He's very technical. He's got a coach's mind, no doubt about it. I always say this about Ryan, and you can take it any way you want, but I say you don't necessarily just train Ryan Garcia. You collaborate with him because he's a thinking man and he's very analytical. Ryan writes things out. He thinks about what needs to be done. He's very self-analytical. He views his fights. He watches like a coach would. He picks apart his performance. And then he picks apart other guys' performances. And then he comes to conclusions. And then he relays those conclusions, thoughts to me. And we discuss them. And we hash it out. And, at the end of the day, Ryan Garcia has the mind of a really solid boxing coach. He's not a one-trick pony in any regard, whether it's mentally, technically, physically, or athletically. He's very well-rounded in that regard, and got to tell you, he's got a very high IQ for more than just boxing. He's a thinking man, and he's instinctually sound. And I can't say enough about him. I really enjoy working with Ryan and being around him. He's a different cat altogether. He really is. He's unique, and he's just, there's something about him that's very charismatic. And I can't say enough good things about him. So the weight, his weight is great right now. I'm not going to divulge weights. I don't need to do that, but I'm just going to tell you one thing. It ain't going to be a problem. And I don't have to put him on the scale. I'll go, what was your weight today? And he'll go, boom. You think he's going to, Ryan ain't going to lie to me about it. And not just that, he stepped on scales in front of me. I know where his weight's at right now, and it's fantastic. And we still have quite some time to go.
Got it.
No problem.
Got it. So the back and forth between Tank and Ryan got pretty heated during the press tour, which we see a lot leading up to fights. Do you ever, take away anything from that kind of thing, or does it depend on the fighters? Or...
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I think Ryan won the war of words. I thought he was clever, pretty funny, to tell you the truth. And again, Ryan don't try to go word for word with him. He is really, he's a wordsmith, let me tell you, and he's very clever. He's very astute. with the microphone and in front of the camera. No, I liked what he did. I'm not going to get into all the stuff that happened because it wasn't that eventful. I thought it was. I thought Ryan was devilishly clever.
I like it. Now, I mean, look, fights don't get much bigger than this one, and Ryan has never really been in the spotlight quite like this. How's he handling that so far? How do you think he'll handle that on fight night?
Ryan's always been in the spotlight. Ryan's been talked about. Look, De La Hoya signed him. He was a hot property. He was a top amateur. He's been doing this since he's been a little kid. He's been in the spotlight. You're always in the spotlight when you fight. So what? More people on TV. How's he going to know who's what? You know what I mean? It's another crowd he's in front of. So the spotlight, yeah, it's not so much about the spotlight. It's about who you're fighting. That's what's important to him. And how are you going to fight? How are you going to fight the guy that's put in front of you? Spotlight's nothing. Ryan kind of created a spotlight for himself through the internet. I mean, he was a pioneer, a groundbreaker when it came to self-promotion. He's been in front of the camera, promoting himself before. I think probably one of the first fighters to ever do it, and that goes to show you his creative and inventiveness and intelligence, and his savviness for self-promotion. I think it was genius what he did. Everyone knew who Ryan Garcia was before, he was really quote unquote Ryan Garcia. He was very popular on the internet. So he's done a great job at that. The spotlight is nothing for him. It really isn't. He feels at home with it. I got to tell you, when Ryan Garcia comes to the gym, he's a different person. He walks in. The minute he walks in, his personality changes. That's a fact. He's outside the gym. He's funny. He's, very, what would be the word? He's very easygoing and affable. But in the gym, man, I'm telling you, his face looks different especially when you put a headgear on him. And I tell him this. I go, man, your expression, your demeanor, your aura changes completely when you get in the ring. Really a fascinating thing to watch. As a trainer, you're gonna see all the minutia involved with your fighter, personality-wise. You can tell whether they're having a good day, a bad day, right when they walk in just by their demeanor. But Ryan Garcia is true to form every time he comes to the gym. He might say hi. He's not real friendly. No. Ryan he's a serious dude. Don't let that great look fool you. He's deep inside. He's got a mean streak a mile wide, and I believe me. He changes his whole personality when he gets in the ring. That's how focused he is.
I'm curious about this. On fight night, when you or one of your lieutenants go to the opponent's locker room for the hand wrapping and so forth, what are some of the things that you're on the lookout for?
Well, number one, that can be waived. If both camps agree to it, that can be waived.
Why would you waive it?
Pardon?
Why would you waive it, though, I guess? That's it.
Well, I didn't say I was going to.
Yeah.
I'm just informing you that those rules can be waived if both parties agree to it. Now, I'm not saying that is even in the cards, but that, just for the enlightenment here, that is a possibility if you wish, if both parties agree. That being said, the Las Vegas Commission is very observant. They're very even-handed, but yet they're very strict on the rules. So if I'm going to wrap hands, there is an inspector or two right there watching you. And again, they know exactly what's allowed and what is not allowed. And so if you said to me, do you trust commissioner, let's say I know which commissioners or inspectors are in the opposing corner, his locker room, and they said, would you trust Inspector A and Inspector B to be able to recognize what is proper and not proper in the wrapping of hands of your opponent? I go, absolutely.
So I know you don't want to give away any strategy, but can you share with the PBC podcast listeners what they might expect early in the fight, like right after the opening bell rings? What do you see? How do you see it playing out early in the fight?
Well, I'll tell you this. I've gone into fights where people go, oh, your fighter's going to do this or that. And I go, oh, no, he isn't. I'm not going to tell you, but oh, no, he isn't. So I could figure that maybe what I've observed in past fights and patterns and so on and so forth might manifest themselves, exactly how they have in the past, or they might not be that way. Maybe they have something else planned. So I don't know, but I will tell you, we've planned for several alternatives. Okay. That's why I brought in sparring that would be able to give me in the ring what I desire in terms of what type of actions I want them to take. In other words, I might say, I want this guy to be the guy that we brought in to press, this guy to box more, this guy to do more in and out, and we've fortunately have the guys that fill those roles and execute what we need to be done in sparring. And so we have our game plan. They have theirs. They might change certain things for Ryan that I'm not aware of yet, but I will tell you this, we prepare for everything that could come our way. So, usually it becomes patently obvious within mere seconds what fighter's going to do once the first round starts.
Finally, let's close it out with this. So you mentioned Ryan's power, which is undeniable. Tank has a lot of power too, which is also undeniable. So we're talking two really big punchers here. Is somebody getting hurt? Somebody getting hurt in this fight?
Yeah. You can count on that.
Mm.
Yeah,
that's not even a question.
Yeah, it's part of what makes one of the many things that makes this fight so much fun. Joe, it's always a pleasure to talk to an old friend and enlighten our listeners at the same time. So we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Well, thanks, guys. And Michael, let's just, for the audience sake, we've known each other, for 35 years or more, maybe?
Wow. More than 30 years, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yeah,
a lifetime.
And you're really not only a great boxing commentator, writer, but your knowledge of the sport is really up there with the best. And I appreciate you.
I'm never going to hear the end of this now.
I know that. No, but listen, Mike started way back when I think one of your first fights in the locker room with me was in San Diego. With Gabriel Rellis, or maybe, it was. I think that's the one I remember the most. Gabriel fought in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. It was probably the late 80s, and you were in the locker room. It was a Terry Norris fight, and I
was going to say that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And that's when I first remember Mike Rosenthal. Okay, and then we became fast friends, and you've been great ever since, and I appreciate that, Michael.
Well, what the little I know is I learned a lot of it from you, so I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that, but we'll be seeing each other soon, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, have a great day, and then. If I don't see it, I'll probably see they're going to have the open workout presser coming up next week sometime. So I'll probably see you there.
Perfect. All right, Joe. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
All right, you guys.
Gervonta Tank Davis. King Ryan Garcia.
The power of Davis. The flash, the hand speed.
Two undefeated stars, two journeys, one mega fight to make history.
It's over! That crowd had me put it on my head. It doesn't get any better than this.
Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia, Saturday, April 22nd, live on pay-per-view.
That's going to do it for this week's show. Saturday night, Sebastian Fundora versus Brian Mendoza on Showtime. Don't forget, set your reminders. We want to thank Brandun Lee and Joe Goossen for stopping by. And, of course, you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and come back for more next week right here on the PBC Podcast.